Hi, I'm Dave Henning, and you are listening to Fresh Start Podcast. Welcome. So today my guest is Brenden Kumarasamy, and Brenden is the founder of MasterTalk. And I want to quote one of your testimonials, Brenden. This is really cool. You've been, this is not your first rodeo, as they say in the Midwest. But here is a great testimonial from the professor at McGill University. Brenden's delivery was so engaging that we lost all track of time. By any measure, he is a very effective speaker and trainer. So welcome, Brenden. Thanks for being with me today.
Such a pleasure to be on, David. Thanks for having me.
So tell me a little bit about your background. I love to get to know people. Our stories are so engaging, and it'd be really cool to find out. You are in the Montreal area, is that right?
That's correct, but I do come down to the Los Angeles area quite a bit, so I'm not too far away.
Oh, okay, great. Yeah, we're here in the Silicon Valley. I'm right down the street from the Googleplex, and over that way is Facebook, and over that way is Apple. And I've only been here about 8 years. I'm from back east, actually. So, so I lived in a little suburb of Toronto, Canada, called Rochester, New York.
I thought you were actually Canadian. I was like, oh.
I tried to be Canadian once, but they kicked me out. So I don't know what the problem is. I didn't have the accent, eh?
Hey.
So let me stop talking because I have jokes. I actually got turned down by the Comedy Zone for stand-up comedy. So I suggest that I stop now and let you tell your story. Tell us where you came from and how you got to where you are now.
Absolutely. So born and raised in Montreal, never wanted to leave the city, studied in university there. And what I did when I was in business school was I did these things called case competitions. So think of it like professional sports, but for nerds. When guys my age, they would play football like we talked to before the show, sports or things like that. That wasn't really my thing. I was more the guy who did presentations for fun. So I would create these weird groups of people who would go out to present to what we call the Business Olympics. So universities from across the world sometimes would fly out, like the University of Florida, Georgetown University, to compete against each other with presentations. So I was crazy nut. That's all I did in my 3 years to get a job in consulting. So after I graduated from university and I started working in the field, kind of asked myself the following question: how do I transition from the money in my pocket to using my time and expertise to make an impact in the world? And that's when the idea for MasterTalk came, because I realized a lot of the content on YouTube wasn't very good on communication. So I did something about it.
Oh, outstanding. Yeah, I've watched some of your YouTube training videos, and one of the other quotes is from the Technovision Montreal, which says, very useful tips, great lessons for the participants. So that's part of what you were just telling me about, and what you have a passion for. And when did you decide that you wanted to really just do this, not so much just for fun and self-amusement, so to speak, but that you discovered your passion, that you really wanted to change the world, to affect the world in the regard to speaking? I was going to look up the quote to get it correct, but who said the pen is more powerful than the sword? And that would go to speaking as well. I have to look
absolutely.
it up. Who said that? I got to Google it.
Probably a pen collector or something. Like you mentioned, when I started MasterTalk, it wasn't really I'm going to change the world kind of thing. I was just frustrated with all of the terrible content that was out there. So I took my phone, went into my basement, and then started making videos in the dark. And then one thing led to another. And I thought it was a dumb idea, frankly. And then a lot of people around me kept saying, hey, Brenden, I think you're onto something. I've never heard this type of advice before. And I just went, really? So I started making videos. I started getting better. I started gaining more traction. Then one thing led to another. And I'd saved a lot of money from my job that I just went, why don't I just go professional? So I took all the money and I just invested into my production. And now the goal is I realize the importance of communication, which is how can I create resources that last beyond me? So after I'm gone, these resources can help everyone who wants to make a difference in the world gain access to those tools without having to pay a cent. So that became the mission after, but it didn't start that way for sure.
Wow, very, very fascinating. What is the most favorite thing that people enjoy discovering about how they can improve their speaking engagement? When they've got things to do, they've got to speak at a Rotary, at a Kiwanis, at a Toastmasters. I always thought that was about breakfast, something to do with toast, but
I think I did too the first couple of times. So you're not alone.
So people in there, especially around here, you hear TED Talks and TEDx Talks and the TED ex-wife talks. I don't know. They have to be able to get on stage and present themselves, not like I'm stumbling over myself today, but in a coherent way that literally communicates where people are receiving the message and not basically, checking their text messages or while they're sitting in the audience. So what do you tell people? What's the secret sauce?
Yeah, of course. So there's two things that come to mind. The first one is we need to all understand where the fear of public speaking comes from. Because for some reason, David, all of us are scared of public speaking, but we don't really know why that is. So let me paint a picture here. The question that we need to ask, and rather the answer, is where have we given most of our presentations? And for most of us, the answer is school, whether it's high school, college, or university. Because think about it, Dave. We don't wake up one morning and say, on the topic of breakfast, hey, you want to get some breakfast and present all day? Nobody does that, right? The actual reality is you're in high school, history teacher comes up to you and says, well, David, I need you to do a presentation on the Renaissance. And you're sitting there like, what's a Renaissance? It's like a fruit? Then you find out later it's a time period in history. So you're in this weird situation where you present topics that you're not passionate about and you don't get to pick to students who don't care because they're focused on their own presentation. It's not that they don't like you. It's that they're worried about themselves, so not paying attention to you. And then you have a teacher who's very competent at what they're doing, very smart, but is stressed out of their minds. They have 30 presentations to go through. But that gets perpetuated in every subject. Sciences, math, English, in French in my case, and everything. So no wonder we're scared of public speaking. We're not taught to see it as an impact driver, as a way to share ideas, rather than this is a chore, this is a responsibility, got to get it done, and that's it. When we treat it like a machine, it's no wonder that we present like one, right? So that's where the fear of public speaking comes from. The second part of the discussion is how we practice. Most of the way that we practice public speaking is just fundamentally wrong. Let's think about how we learn a skill. So when we learn a skill, it's simple. Guitar, like I see in your background, a new instrument, a new sport. What do we focus on? We don't focus on the special tricks when we get started with the guitar. We focus on one simple song that we can get right so we could show off to our friends that we know how to play guitar. So instead of focusing on the Jimi Hendrix really difficult stuff, we just go, how do I play Jingle Bells on this thing? Then you get it right. And then people go, wow, David, you're so great at the guitar. And that gives you a confidence boost to say, well, if I can get this song right, I can probably get every other song right. But we don't apply that analogy to public speaking because it's Wednesday. Our boss or a client comes up to us and says, David, I need you to give a presentation for Friday. So you go, okay, nobody told me. You start picking slides, you present, and then what do you do with the presentation? You crumble it up, put it in the garbage, and move on to the next one. The secret is you need to present the same presentation hundreds of times.
Oh, that is a very insightful, amazing thought. I actually was privileged to go see a gentleman who's long gone right now named Zig Ziglar out of Texas, and he traveled around the United States. And interesting that you should say that. I was told that he and a lot of other well-known speakers do that very thing. They basically have one speech. They might make some changes in it, but they reiterate that. and in a compelling way, and in some cases a fairly dramatic way to get their point across, and a lot of body movement, body language as well. But I heard somewhere in one of my iterations of my career that facts tell and stories sell. And there's something engaging about personal stories or about stories that you've heard or in your own life that make a difference. And you reminded me of my high school history teacher that I subsequently flunked the class because he was the basketball coach. And he was the basketball coach, and he did not have the communication skills that you are referring to. So I was a totally bored kid, and but ironically, I had to take summer school. Don't tell anybody to graduate from high school because I kind of enjoyed this separate program we had called skipping class.
I love that program. I'm just kidding. I don't condemn that.
Yeah. But ironically, I had to take summer school, and I aced history. And ever since, all those books back there are basically history and biographies that I just love to find out what happened in the past and how that relates to me now, how that relates to our world. And the key is, as you said, making it real and connecting, not throwing away something you did, but recycling it, I guess you might say. I guess, boy, that'd be a great word to say. Am I hearing you correctly?
Absolutely, much better than most people. I mean, you got it in the sense of, I love that you use that example to demonstrate the point. But the idea is simple. Back to what your analogy was as a kid. If we don't tie a reason for people to speak better, they'll never want to speak better. So a good example, like to give to 8-year-olds, is obviously they don't care about presentation. They're 8. But if you ask them what their favorite sport is or something along those lines, as an example here, they might say soccer. Then I would ask them, what's the difference between a soccer team member and a soccer captain? And then they would say, well, captain needs to lead. And how do they lead? Well, through communication, through telling them what to do. So then my ask for them is not, hey, David, when you were 8, do you want to practice communication? You're like, no. But if I say, David, do you want to be a sports captain one day? Do you want to be a soccer captain? Do you want to lead your teams to victory? Well, yeah. Then I'm saying, well, let's start practicing then. You see? It's kind of how you tie the incentive.
Oh, very good. Yeah, so you relate to the listener where they are at. In this case, they're 8 years old. So you apply that lesson. I see a lot of friends of mine, a lot of professional sports people. I have some friends and NFL coaches and different people who have made a post-career as a public speaker. I quite frankly, I love it. The other aspect that you could probably tell is I got to hear Terry Bradshaw one time, who was the former quarterback for the Pittsburgh Steelers. He's got a horse farm down in Oklahoma now, but I heard him on stage right before the president of the former president's wife was the next speaker. But Terry Bradshaw, if you've ever heard of him, his sense of humor is pretty much what you might say off the chain. So he had everybody engaged, and then he tied that all together with the message that he was bringing. So what do you teach people about the aspect of humor?
Yeah, so for me, humor is very simple in the sense of, if you're not funny, don't say jokes, right? I think the idea is like, play to your strengths. If you're someone who's more introverted and you'd rather talk about data, that's totally fine. There's always a different way of spinning something. There's no right idea. The key message here is, what is your key idea? So if there's one sentence your audience needs to remember, they won't remember your name, they won't remember your title, they won't remember your accolades. They don't even remember your content, but they'll remember that sentence. What do you want the sentence to be? That's your key idea. Then from there, you need to ask yourself, what is the best way of defending that idea? So for me, when I speak on the topic of communication, obviously, I'm trying to figure out not my content, because that's easy for everybody, because we're all smart, but how do I present that same content in a compelling way? So then I have many options on the table. I could do a story, an analogy, a quote, humor, all that stuff. And when I realized what worked for me was talking about my own insecurities as a speaker, because that's how I build trust with my audience. By telling them a story about how I didn't know how to speak for most of my life, to give the audience a kind of point of view here. I grew up in a French education system, and I didn't know how to speak French. So I had to, all my presentations, I didn't know the language. So if I can figure out public speaking, you can too. But that was the best way of selling my message, which is I believe anyone can master public speaking if they just put in the work. So back to humor. If you believe that humor is a good tool, like I do, for your presentations, then you implement it. And then implementing it means different things. But the only tip that really matters is understand that the best speakers in the world do two things with humor. One is when their jokes don't land, you don't know. So it's not that they're funny, but rather when they say 20 jokes and two of them land, the two jokes that land make them go, "Oh, David, you're such a funny guy." But you tried saying 18 other jokes and they didn't land. But if you look sad that they didn't land, I know this is complicated, but if you look sad, then they'll pity you, which won't work. So for me, when I tell jokes, most of them actually don't. I'm actually not that funny. But when the two jokes that are funny land, they go, "Man, Brendan's so funny." And I go, "That's the secret that people don't know." Second thing, super easy. Say the same jokes over and over again because you're presenting them to different audiences.
Very interesting. Wow. So what are you doing nowadays? You're probably in a similar situation as we are here. Of course, I personally have been working from home for like 25 years, so it doesn't make a whole lot of difference to me because, as you see, we are now communicating 3,000 miles away across a little device that was created right down the road here in San Jose, California, called Zoom. And I hope they pay me a royalty for saying that. I doubt it. How are you utilizing your skills, your career now under these circumstances? And before you answer that, help me understand that you, as you mentioned, you've been to LA lots of times. You've been traveling, speaking publicly. Is that right?
You got it. And attending conferences as well.
Oh, excellent. Conferences. Yeah. How have you transitioned now under the current situation?
Yeah, I think this is a good lesson for everybody. The situation isn't great for anybody, right? For most people. So in my case, I had a lot of corporate engagements. I had a lot of stuff going on, and overnight everything just went to zero. So I needed to think about how do I pivot? If I can't travel anymore, if I can't meet prospective clients, if I can't go pitch anymore, how do I still sell the vision of MasterTalk? Because I want more people to still get access to this information. I still want to help people. So then instead, what everyone needs to realize from a foundational point of view is that this year, 2020, you're not going to get it back. You can't just go to a bank and say, "Can I get this year back? Could I just pay some interest and get a +1?" No. Time is the only thing you can't buy back. So I hate it when people say, "Oh, 2020 is canceled. We can't do anything." No. If this time is going to run out anyways, you might as well take advantage of it. So I thought really hard with my team and said, how can I still gain exposure? How can I still add value to people, especially during these times where leaders really need to shine and help people? And that's when the idea of guesting on a bunch of podcasts came on. That's when the idea for doing virtual keynotes came on. That's when doing more coaching one-on-one or in groups through Zoom came on. Or just simply listening to more stuff, podcasts, books, leveling myself up so that when the lights come back on again, I can sprint for the finish line.
Wow, that is a fantastic answer. What I heard you saying is you had to shift, you had to pivot, you had to rethink, you had more time to do some of the things that you might not have had time to do, quite frankly, and level up. That is really a key word that all of us can take stock in, is to level ourselves up, invest in ourselves. Oh my goodness, I probably spent, I don't even know, thousands of dollars investing in myself, educating and conferences and all kinds of stuff. But the end result is, I hope that is made me who I am today, when this whole opportunity came. I don't call it a tragedy. I call it an opportunity of ramping up my podcast. It has been phenomenal, and the response has been excellent. So I'm really pleased to, especially just to meet new people like yourself, and just to have a little chat and say, hey, what can we do? How can we make a difference? How can we change? How can we impact people in spite of, quote, so-called limitations? So, yeah, you made a wonderful statement in that regard. So I'm speaking with Brenden Kumarasamy from Montreal, and I think I said it correct twice now.
You're on a roll, David.
And so, so here's the big question of the day. I like to throw a curveball here. So do you like Jimi Hendrix?
Whoa, that was a curveball. I actually have never listened to any of his songs, but I know of his work. I did play guitar a bit when I was in my tens, but I was terrible at it. I'm sure I'm nowhere as good as you are.
Oh, well, don't ask my wife that question. I'm pretty much self-taught, so I can play chords and play a couple old Beatles songs, just like you said. I'd sit down and practice until I got it right, but I never was good at lead guitar, like Eric Clapton or somebody. But I have a guitar that looks like his, so I guess that counts for something. It's kind of like my golf bag. I thought if I got a brand new golf bag and a new putter and driver and a new hat, that my golf would improve. But ironically, it didn't. So
It really doesn't.
similar to my guitar playing, which it sits there and looks cool. I think that's the concept: is you got to look cool, and people get this impression that you might possibly be cool. so
it's like podcast setups.
Yeah, see? There you go. Perfect. Now I'm getting into a little bit of bragging, because I was actually at the original Woodstock in the Catskill Mountains of New York when Jimi Hendrix performed there. But I have a confession to make, because nobody could leave for 3 days because there was a massive amount of cars when 500,000 people showed up in the mountains on a country road for his concert. Even the police couldn't leave. And so everybody was kind of packing up by Monday morning. And please don't tell anybody this, I actually didn't see Jimi Hendrix play at Woodstock. My brothers said, let's get to the car. Let's get the heck out of here, with 5-hour drive back to Rochester. So keep that under your hat, please. I know you're not wearing a hat right now, but don't tell anybody. But I had almost all of his albums. So anyway, I love music. You can probably tell. But back to you. Let me ask you this question. So do you integrate music into your talks?
You'd be surprised to hear that I do. And the way that I do it is not necessarily through my keynotes, but through my videos. So one of the fun facts about me, since we're on the subject, is I speak 3 languages, but I can karaoke in 8. Yeah, I can do that.
Wow.
I can dance for 6 hours straight without a sip of alcohol, without any breaks. I'm nuts. And what was the other thing? And my best friend's a rapper. So there's definitely a lot of musical elements that come in. So I actually make a lot of videos on that. I can give you a small teaser here. So one of the things I learned from karaoke, I know it sounds really odd, but what karaoke allows you to do is it improves your vocal projection. 1. 2, because you're in a safe space. Karaoke is one of the few spaces in the world where you're allowed to scream and it's socially accepted. So let's say you're practicing vocal projection at home, you're yelling. Your wife or your parents or your husband or whoever is going to look at you like, David, what are you doing? Like, keep your voice down. Right? Same thing if you're on the street. If you're yelling, you're going to get arrested, right? There's no, right? So the only time, really, that you're allowed to yell is in karaoke. You can yell as loud as you want. No one cares. So if you're an introvert, it really helps with vocal projection. Number 2 is speaking in languages you don't understand. So the other 5 languages I can karaoke in, I know this is surprising: Korean, "Naseo," which is hi in Korean; Japanese, "Konnichiwa, genki desu ka," which is hi, how are you; Mandarin, Hindi, and Spanish. But since I don't understand the languages, but I can pronounce the words, if you can pronounce words you don't understand, it's super easy to pronounce words you do understand.
Oh, that is an amazing tip. Well, that's very cool. So Ironically, once again, you should say that I was at a convention in Vegas, and kind of before and after, we were having a little evening karaoke thing, and I actually won a T-shirt for singing "Johnny Be Good," the Chuck Berry song in this karaoke thing, including his little duck walk with his air guitar. So, but I have been banned from singing around the house lately. I don't know why.
We got to change that, David. You got to speak your truth.
Yeah, it's right. What else as we kind of wrap up our time together? This has been fantastic. Some really good tips, some information, and getting to know you is awesome. So what other message would you like to leave with our audience before we kind of wrap things up?
Absolutely. The last message I want to leave people with is the same advice I like to give on every show that I'm on, which is simple. Be insane or be the same. You want to be like everyone else? That's totally fine. You know, you want to get the job, you want to get the white picket fence, the 2.5 kids. I don't know why it's just 2. But if you want to do something important, something magical, something great, then you need to get into the habit of communicating the weird things that you do that are not illegal to everyone else around you. Because this is what it does. Notice the confidence. That's what I want people to pay attention to. Not what I'm saying, but how I'm communicating it. I just told someone in a public setting that I can karaoke in 8 languages, but I don't seem too uncomfortable saying it. Because I'm very at ease with who I am and what I do and what I'm trying to accomplish. Another thing, I am the only person you will have on the show that is a 6-figure earner who started MasterTalk, a YouTube channel when he's 22 on public speaking, who's literally sitting on his mattress as he's talking to you in his mom's basement and doesn't own a car. Why did I make all those decisions? Because I'm saving every penny in my pocket so I can make MasterTalk successful, because that's my mission. That's my life's work. And if you can get to that place in your life where you say, you know, I'm making 500 grand at this executive position at Google, but I'd rather bake cupcakes and sell them for $10 or $5 or $2. Now you're in that place of being more insane and actually doing what you want to do. So my ask is become more insane.
Oh, man, you hit it spot on, my friend. Absolutely. I see that in this crazy area that I live in that is just obsessed with what these corporations are doing, but they're not happy. And so what a great message to wrap things up here. One other question is, how can people contact you? What is your website, and how do they find you?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm not famous here like David over here who's got NFL Connects and all that stuff. But feel free to send me a message on Instagram. I'm at Master Your Talk. I answer all my DMs. And if you want to improve your public speaking skills, if you want to get better, check out my YouTube channel, Master Talk, in one word.
I'm writing this down. Master Talk in one word.
Right. But you've already seen my videos. Why are you writing it down?
Well, it makes it look like I'm actually doing something.
Oh, that's fair.
No, I did write it down because and the Instagram. I'm just I always make notes. I make lists every day because I've got so many things spinning in my mind I want to get done in a day. I work off of lists all day long, and I want to make sure that I got your message out appropriately and had ways for people to follow up with you. And maybe, I don't know, maybe buy you a new mattress at some point.
Oh, you're the best, David. Yeah, I love this.
So thank you so much for being with me again. My guest on Fresh Start Podcast today. It's just been fun to chat with you. And I'll send you all my Jimi Hendrix albums that my wife doesn't want me hauling around 300 albums anymore. So Brenden Kumarasamy in Montreal, Canada. The creator and founder of MasterTalk. If you want to be a better public speaker, communicate better in your job or off your job or in public, this is the man you need to talk to. Brenden, thank you so much. It has been a true pleasure. Thank you very much for being with me today.
Pleasure was mine, David. Thanks for having me on.